Velikovsky was a charlatan.
Sure.
He should be dismissed. He was talking rubbish. No. What he did in his original publication, the book Worlds in Collision, and the clue is in the title, by the way, the worlds were in collision. That's what Greek mythology is all about.
Of course.
The observation of the heavens and the battle between the gods.
Yeah.
The gods were in the heavens.
And also potentially that it is also after, if this big catastrophe, so to speak, that we're talking about, or cataclysm here happened, is potentially also after this period that human beings became very, we're starting to pay very close attention to the heavens, mapping the stars, knowing to what's going on, in regards to that they were trying to obviously, keep up with what is going on and if this potentially could happen again and so forth. That's just my theory, but anyway, please continue.
Exactly. Now here's one interesting point to do exactly with what you just said. Why is astrology of such fascination?
Right.
And what is the difference between astrology and astronomy? Because there is a difference, a major difference.
Yeah.
And the difference, I contend, between astronomy and astrology is that astronomy studies galaxies and stars and cosmology generally. That's what the Hubble telescope's looking at. It's looking at galaxies billions of light years away.
Right.
We're told. Astrology is concerned with the impact and influence of the planets on humans.
Right.
Now, if the planets had sufficient impact on humans in the past to have nearly destroyed the human race, you're quite right to say that we have an absolute fascination with making sure they're still in the same place they were yesterday.
That's right.
Hence something like Stonehenge being erected as an astrological observatory to make sure that the moon and the planets that we can see are where they should be. Because if they're not where they should be, watch out, guys. They're on the way here.
Something's going on, right?
We may be in trouble.
Yeah. Huh.
Hence, the influence of the planets is significant on Earth.
Exactly. And, also for the fact, excuse me, I first heard Jordan Maxwell talk about this, but he talked about even the influence of Jupiter, that it managed to pull, I can't remember exactly how many degrees or points of degrees that Jupiter managed to do on our sun. But the fact is, while it rotates around the sun, it managed to pull it, slightly towards it, so to speak, which makes a small move on the sun in its orbit. But anyway, what that implies is that if this object can have an effect on such a, incredibly huge object like the sun, the electromagnetic, energy that is involved in this, that is obviously is going to have an effect on planet Earth and subsequently every human being walking on the planet. It's as simple as that. That's the way I see it.
Exactly. And if this did happen, and the evidence would appear to support the fact that there was a close passage to Earth of another planetary body of almost the same size of the Earth, this would explain much of the modern research into, shall we say, the Himalayas, which are known to be very recent mountains, very recently created mountains. And when explorers find evidence of marine life on the Himalayas 5,000 meters above sea level,
right?
You say, well, where did the mountains start from?
Yeah.
If it's got marine life at 5,000 meters above sea level, it must have started at sea level, because whales don't fly 5,000 meters into the sky.
Right.
Not Machu Picchu. In South America, you have a similar event where it appears that around Lake Titicaca,
Right.
there's evidence of marine life i.e. sea life, not freshwater life, sea life, at 13,000 feet, 3,000 meters.
Yeah.
So if you've got a gravitational pull as powerful as a planet will create, it can move mountains, and it has moved mountains. And the sooner we get the idea that Earth is actually in a currently stable and relatively benign period, it hasn't always been that way.
Right, right.
And we need to get our history a little bit more up to date.
You know, there are, hints, so to speak, coming out now and again, even in the mainstream press. I'm just recalling from an article from the BBC, December last year, that talked about mammoths, another great beast, peppered with the material from space. And this article was basically outlining the idea that tusks dating to some, let's say here, 35,000 years ago, all show signs of having been peppered with meteor fragments. And ancient remains come from Alaska, but researchers have also Siberian bison skulls with the same pockmarks. It suggests again and hints towards that that something of this nature has been taking place. Either if you say that this is because of an incoming object, or as in this case, I think they mentioned to it as an explosion. I think one of the guys here interviewed in the article say, let's say, we think that this was probably an impact which exploded in the air that sent these particles flying into the animals. That's his theory about this anyway. But what it suggests, even from the mainstream point of view, is that something has happened.
Yeah, I think ideas are coming into the mainstream, but the interesting point is where they're coming from. It's many of them are coming from some of the ideas and research that have been done by, how should I put it, alternative historians. People
exactly.
who are saying, no, I don't go along with the explanation that we're being offered.
Right.
I think there are other explanations that we should examine, and if my evidence stacks up, then so be it. Let's have a look at it.
Yeah.
No, there's one point which I think is worth mentioning, which is the influence of Christianity, and specifically the Bible, on European culture and European science. Now, if you look in a copy of a Bible, now the Bible, as I know it, in England, is obviously published in English, but it was only translated into English at the time of King James. That was 1611.
Right.
That was the translation of the Latin Bible, which in turn had been translated from the Greek and the Aramaic.
Right.
But it was translated into English by the order of King James. That's why in England we refer to it as the King James Bible.
The authorized version.
The authorized. It was only authorized by King James.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't authorized by anybody other than him.
Of course.
And he was illiterate anyway. He couldn't read. But he was a king, so he could do things like that.
Yeah, of course. No problem.
So one of the first things that somebody did was to try to work out the date of the day of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And that was calculated by the very simple expedient of going through all the generations, and in the Bible they're referred to as so-and-so begat so-and-so and begat so-and-so, which means one was a son of the other.
Right.
And if you take it all the way back from the time of King Solomon, you arrive at a very specific date for Genesis verse 1, chapter 1, which is the date of the day of creation, where it says, and God created the heaven and the earth. And that date in the English Bible is 4004 BC. And if you take any Bible, you can confirm that date, because many of the major events in the Bible are dated.
Right.
Now, we might say, oh, goodness me, how stupid that is. 4004 BC, no, that's nowhere near long enough for the world to be created. It doesn't matter. That was what was believed by the church.
Right.
And the church in the 17th and 18th century was powerful, very powerful. Not many people could read, so they had to go into the church and hear their priest reading from the Bible. And if the priest said, this was the day of creation, you believed it,
Hmm.
or you got into serious trouble. Now, if you take that date as being the date of the day of creation, and you are a believer in Christianity, that is your worldview.
Right.
You then come along to the introduction of what we might call today the modern sciences, say archaeology and geology and anthropology and biology and all the other ologies. And they all started really in the mid-19th century. Now you may recall that there was a very famous book published in England called Origin of Species
Okay.
by
Yeah.
Charles Darwin.
Yeah. Sure.
That book was published in 1859 in England. And Charles Darwin, in his book, basically said, if I can summarize it, that it was survival of the fittest. Now, Charles Darwin never actually said that. He never said that was what it was.
Mm-hmm.
He just said that there was development depending on the natural environment in which creatures were living.
Right.
What happened following the publication of the book Origin of Species in 1859 was that the sciences, as we know them today, were developing into an alternative view of the Christian view of Earth
Mm.
and its history.
Yeah.
And several scientists wanted to use this new idea of evolution of species to attack the church. Now that attack has been going on for the past 150 years,
Right.
where science is saying no, the world has been a long, long time in development, and the Christians are saying no, the Bible says it was created in 4004 BC, and so there's been an argument.
Mm.
The point of it is that the biblical tradition has been around for longer than the scientific tradition,
Right.
and there is still a war going on, and there are still many people who, in order to get published in the 19th century, had to go along with the Christian view of the world, because it was perceived at that time as being the only view that could be tolerated.
Right.
One very good example is Flinders Petrie, who was probably the most famous archaeologist working in Egypt
Mm-hmm.
around 1880, 1890. He was financed by a Christian organization in order to find evidence to support the Bible.
There we go.
If he found evidence, which he did, Flinders Petrie was an honourable man, but obviously practical when it came to making sure that he was financed.
Mm-hmm.
When he found evidence which didn't agree with the biblical traditions, he basically just didn't publish it.
Right.
His notes recorded it, and he discovered many things which didn't accord with the traditional Christian view of the Old Testament, and because Egypt was a neighboring country to Palestine,
Right.
which is where Moses led the Jews
Yeah.
into Palestine.
Allegedly, yeah.
It was Palestine, was now Israel.
Right.
There are many things which are now being re-examined, fortunately, with a less emotional view and a more practical view that say that, we did get things wrong in the past and we should correct them.
And this is also, I mean, in regards to theology, that again can be obviously interpreted in different ways, meaning that for the people, so to speak, there's one version, and then for those initiated, so to speak, there's another version. I mean, to connect these ideas, even with Masonry, for instance, we can actually correlate this to what is known as the Anno Lucius calendar. This is Masons have their own calendars, and this particular one is the Craft Masonry